Hello, everyone. I'm Henry Gordon Smith, founder and CEO of Agritecture, a global urban agriculture consulting firm. And I'm here joined by my colleague, Darren. How are you doing, Darren?
I'm good, Henry. I'm Darren Keeler. I'm the CEO of Watergrow based out of Auckland, New Zealand. We've got customers in around 40 countries worldwide.
So today we're going to be talking about the 2020 Global Cea Census. This year, Agritecture and Autogrow have partnered again for a second year to do this annual census to gather data from farms all around the world and share them with our community so that the industry can grow together. Last year, we reached over 300 farms in 50 countries. We got some key insights on the industry. And this year, obviously, COVID-19 has heavily affected all industries, but controlled environment agriculture certainly has been affected by that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, about how the census is going to kind of explore this topic of adaptation to COVID-19 and just a little bit of our perspectives on that.
That's right. So one of the things we want to talk about is labor. That came through really strongly last year's census. And the respondees were indicating that it's, about 37% of them indicate it's their largest cost, with it being around 15% of their operating expenditure. And this has been, kind of well understood for a while, but it's great to have some figures around it.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, it's something we've talked about and heard at events all the time, that labor is this increasing and fluctuating cost for farms. But it was great to see the responses last year. And I'm particularly excited to see what different responses we get going on this year. So, to kind of manage this labor issue, let's kind of talk about automation as it relates to that. I mean, what are your hopes and opinions on automation, the CA industry, Darren? What do you think are the pros and cons of that?
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't see any cons to it. I think that automation's really become a default position. I mean, I think if you want to get into CEA farming now, you have to consider what level of automation you're going to be doing. And in part, that's simply because it creates more efficiencies on the farm, and you're not as reliant on, a seasonal labor force.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, from my perspective, it really is going to depend on, where you are. I mean, obviously the high tech forms of CEA that would benefit the most from automation, meaning these high CapEx systems where the risk is high and you want that labor cost to be low and controlled, make a lot of sense. But those don't really work in the markets necessarily where labor costs are so low, because the population also can't pay a lot of money for that. So we were talking, I was talking recently about India. What's the future of vertical farming in India, for example? I'm not sure I imagine, automated vertical farms or automated CA facilities there necessarily. But if you're looking at places in the West or even the Middle East, definitely that's going to be a major, major part of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Henry. I mean, maybe a year ago I would have agreed with you, but I think the pandemic has altered the course of the industry quite a lot. I mean, we're getting the bulk of our new inquiries are coming from India. So interesting that you name that country. And a lot of where you start with automation is with controlling irrigation, and managing water usage. I mean, there's a direct relationship between those two things. So it's a factor for labor, but it's also a factor for sustainability. So and a lot of these guys have to manage the water supply. So I think that's the basic level of automation you start with, regardless of where you are in the world.
Well, I think that's a spot on point as well, that you said that certain automation that can be selected in the case of India, water scarcity, and what Autogrow is doing there to manage water, that makes a lot of sense. I guess what I'm thinking about is like kind of the high-tech, fully automated, vertical farms. I don't know, do you think that's going to really pick up in these parts of the world?
Yes, because there is still wealth even in those countries. Those are the guys that are kind of leading the initiative around, more sustainable farming practice, and they're getting government subsidies. So wherever there's government subsidies, investment from high net worth individuals and venture capital tends to follow.
Yeah.
And Singapore, I think about 4 months ago, announced that they were investing another 30 million into local food production, urban farming initiatives. So they were upping the ante. Middle East, which I know you're much more familiar with than me, they seem to be doubling down, tripling down on new investment.
Absolutely. I mean, since COVID-19, there's been multiple new incentives announced throughout the GCC, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, UAE, especially. Even in Oman, there's a big tender that came out for a big CA facility there, where I was. So it's definitely spreading even more in the GCC. And automation is actually a big part of the discussion, because they've changed a lot of their rules around having expats work in the countries. They're trying to localize the jobs as much as possible. And those jobs need to be high paying jobs. It's difficult to have high paying jobs in CA facilities without automation. So there's always that balance that's important there. But I think, yeah, the GCC is.
It's true. It's true. I also think maybe the definition of automation is changing. Traditionally we've thought about it as the systems that control the heating and the cooling and the venting and those types of systems, whereas more broadly it's encompassing forms of robotics. And even though robotics is quite early, and I was asked a question recently actually about the impact of robotics. The challenge is robotics is still quite immature. The technology's there, but it's very expensive and it's not proven. So it's not at the point where it's getting wide adoption, which is a shame, because I think that with COVID-19, the industry's much more willing to look at it. But I think automation really now kind of has to be inclusive of robotics, whether that's for planting, trimming, harvesting, pollinating. There's all sorts of applications for it.
Yeah, I suppose we should have explained that there are levels of automation, right? I mean, there you can automate some of your systems. You can be a semi-automated. You can use automation to, empower the grower to do something, or you can imagine a fully, robotic farm that really has no human interaction in it. And there are some companies going that way, as you said, at a very high cost. So really a wide range there. And I guess that's really why we're doing the census, right? I mean, we want to hear from these growers, what's going on, right? So what's our message to the growers today, Darren? What do we want them to do?
So we're looking for greenhouse growers, tunnel farmers, guys doing indoor farming under lights. I mean, basically everybody across the controlled environment spectrum to get on the survey. And, the great thing with the survey, of course, is we publish it for everybody. And that means that we're helping inform the industry around what's happening, with trends and pain points and solution areas in the industry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, our industry continues to evolve. New opportunities and challenges develop. Last year, 41% of the respondents, had no agriculture experience when starting their CA facility. So there's so much that we can all benefit from learning from each other. And that's why AutoGrow and Agritecture work together to publish this data for the benefit of the industry. So we really want you to participate, especially growers. We want greenhouse growers, vertical farmers. So be sure to fill in the 2020 census in collaboration with AutoGrow and Agritecture. You can find it in the link below or above, depending on where you're looking, but please participate. And thanks so much for listening to Darren and I today.